All right, here we go. All right, here we go in 3, 2, 1. What's up, y'all? Welcome to the Sports Medicine Broadcast, a podcast to promote and improve your practice as an athletic trainer. We got Carrie Wood back. She was with us on Tuesday, just recently. We were talking about monitoring mental health, and that's, I think, a really good episode, so definitely check that out. We got an old veteran, Larry Cooper. He's been on the podcast multiple times. I think he was on there when we were NATA in Houston. He's been on when I was here in the studio, and then in New Orleans, I think in Las Vegas. So Larry has been on quite a few times. And then also joining again, Todd Sable. So it's going to be a fun conversation. We're talking about how you can communicate and grow. Right. And so just recently, I was on social media, and Mike Hopper, he's a real big advocate for athletic trainers on social media. And one of the things that he said was, like, I'm pretty sure I know specifically what I was talking about, but he was saying, it's funny how there's AT Twitter accounts that claim to promote and improve the profession, but most of the stuff they do is negative. So that's kind of the theme with what we're going to be going with today, right? And so once we get into it, that's kind of what we're like talking about, thinking about how you can communicate and grow, but that's not the only thing we're talking about. And so Carrie, we talked about how she's been at Redmond High School for going on 26 years. She's in the Hall of Fame in Oregon and NWATA. So she's done a lot of really cool things. And again, the episode about monitoring mental health was really good, and it's a really simple way. I've looked through the notes, and I've kind of created the post so that hopefully it has the step-by-step instructions, and I'll go back and edit that as needed. So you can check that one out. Again, that one's monitoring mental health. But this one is sportsmedicinebroadcast.com/communicate. And then one random fact about Carrie is what, Carrie?
I forgot to be thinking about it. The people who know me know that I am a Tabasco addict. So I carry Tabasco packets or mini bottles with me in my purse, in my car, in my suitcase, and everywhere I'm at. So I like Tabasco on everything.
Interesting. So how often at a holiday do you get like a bottle or like a different types of flavors of Tabasco?
Oh, I only like just the regular. No other flavors. And like if you go to a restaurant with me, I'll ask for Tabasco and they'll say, "Oh, we have Tapatio." No, that's not Tabasco, but do you have Tabasco? But I buy the big Costco size bottles and go through them pretty quickly. I think I've developed an immunity to the hotness. I just like the flavor. But
All right. Very interesting. All right, and Carrie,
so if you're ever at a buffet breakfast or something at a hotel and you see those little Tabasco packets that look like ketchup packets, but they're Tabasco, grab me a handful.
all right. All right, so Larry, something new, interesting about you. Last time we talked about the strangest food you've ever eaten. So what do you think your answer to that would be?
The equivalent of the American potato chip in Japan is squid, dried squid. And I had a Japanese college roommate, and I tried that along with some sake. Interesting combination.
All right, so I have to know, would you say they're comparable? Dried
No,
squid and potato chips?
no, they're very rubbery.
You know, I watch Paw Patrol some because I have kids, right? And so the guy, the fisherman, whatever, he always has squid jerky or whatever, and that's what it's always like, very chewy, rubbery, like very hard to bite off. And so very interesting. All right, so dried squid. So kind of last week we talked about monitoring mental health, and we talked about these questions, and I never really tied them back in together. But here, as we're doing things, we're getting to know each other. We're getting to know random fun things, or just like yesterday, 2 days ago, with one of my coaches and another one of my coaches, we were talking about, hey, over the Christmas break, let's get together. We'll have like a big game night. You bring your wife and kids, you bring your fiance. We'll just come play games, hang out at the house, cook some food, right? So we're communicating, we're building those relationships, and we're growing together because we're not just wins practice, this athlete's hurt, but we're doing something else. We're building those conversations. We're communicating. We're going to talk, right? And so just recently, there was kind of an issue going on, and I was like, "Hey, coach, can you explain this to me, or why did this happen?" Instead of I could just sit there in the athletic training room and, well, why does he always do this? I hate this, and this. They don't like me, right? And so instead, I just got up, walk over there. Hey, can you explain this to me? And so that's the path we're headed on this week. And Todd's gonna be doing most of the questions, but that's kind of just like one little story where I have learned to communicate and grow the relationship or improve the practice as an athletic trainer. So.
Yeah, I think that's a good segue. And I think we're going to touch on kind of a few topics in terms of communicating, with coaches, officials, parents, other athletic training professionals as well. And the biggest thing, I think, and again, this is I like this group we have because we're all a little bit different age group and probably have some differing perspectives and stuff. But when there's a lack of communication, we don't know where somebody else is coming from, the context they have, the education they have, and we all kind of in our heads think, maybe think that we know best or we have the best perspective or best idea, but without that communication, we don't know where other people are coming from. So I think people like to jump to conclusions a lot on certain things. That creates divide, and then everything. I mean, just in general, in today's day and age, everything is so polarized. Not just politics or not just other things, but even just day-to-day dialogue between athletic training professionals in general. So, like I said earlier, I think we have a lot of good topics to touch on, and I'm sure we could all give plenty of different examples of all the people that we just touched on, whether there were conflicts or so on and so forth. But where would you guys just kind of open up? Where would you guys kind of say that is just in terms of athletic training profession in general, in terms of the dialogue that's going on?
Ladies first.
either one.
I could say that if you don't have good communication skills, that you can't be a good athletic trainer, period. Because we're in a business that we work with people, and so any profession that you work with people, you need to be able to communicate with them. I was just reading an article that talked about the most desirable traits that employers are looking for. Number 1 was communication skills. Number 2 was honesty and integrity. And number 3, which I thought was interesting, was teamwork skills. So I'm getting a phone call on my iPad. That's weird. All right. Am I still on there? But anyway, those 3 things: communication, honesty and integrity, and teamwork skills. I mean, that just sums up our whole profession, I thought. And so really, it's so important. What do you think, Larry?
To add to that, we are a people profession. And if you can't communicate with the people you're dealing with every day, obviously you're going to have an issue. You're stuck between a rock and a hard place. But to add to Carrie's 3 things, I think positivity has to be there as well, because, we're dealing with injuries and possibly season-ending injuries and illnesses and things like that. So we have to remain upbeat and positive and not always be that doom and gloom, or, the person that, is like the the Grim Reaper. We are not that. Athletic trainers are fun people, but we sometimes get the rap that we're the Grim Reaper because we're always giving negative news. When we talk to parents, we talk to coaches, it's always negative. So we have to try and change that. Work a little bit harder, maybe, to be a little bit more positive in all situations.
Yeah, and I mean, positivity. I mean, with some of the new studies coming out, positivity can have a huge impact on the outcomes of an athlete in rehabilitation and so on and so forth. So with coaches, for example, I'm sure we've all had disagreements with coaches one way or the other. Whether it was things they were doing in practice or recovery time or even just scheduling. What are some tips that we can give to athletic trainers maybe on how we can communicate with coaches a little better, just in terms of issues that arise along the way? Maybe Larry, we can start with you.
Well, I think that you always have to look at the big picture. You can't always look at your side or the coach's side. You have to look at the big picture and include the parents and the athletes and the team and things like that. When you start stepping back and looking at the bigger picture, I think you become a better clinician. You start to develop a better rapport with everybody involved. And we have to remember this is something that they absolutely love to do. And sometimes we take their injury, not us, the injury takes them apart away from that, but they think it's us because they're in the athletic training room, they're doing rehab, they're not at practice, they're not participating. And I've always tried to be very mindful of that because I had a pretty significant injury when I was in high school that I was removed from wrestling for over a year. And I mean, wrestling was my, my main sole focus in high, as far as athletics. And it was really kind of identified me in high school. I was known as a wrestler. I was known, in the school. So I've always tried to be mindful of that, and I think we as athletic trainers have to do a better job of that.
Carrie, what do you think?
I would say that it starts before the first day of the season. Your relationship that you build with your coaches starts early. So when I have a new coach that comes on board, I always schedule a meeting with them. And I think one thing that we lose sight of is that we're in a service profession. We're here to serve and help and assist. Yeah, we're the support staff. And so I make sure that the coaches know, hey, I'm here to help you. I want us to succeed as much as you want to succeed. And so what can I do to help you make our team better? But then I also say, but you need to know that if I have a kiddo that I have to pull, they have to be pulled. That's, there's it's a big deal, but otherwise I will try to keep your athletes on the field as much as I can. My job is to keep your athletes on the field, not to take your athletes off the field. You know what I mean? So I think that helps just to have that upfront conversation so they know that you're on their team and you're not the bad guy. I make sure I attend all coaches meetings. So they know that I'm on their team as well, that everybody sees us there and make sure that we're part of the group and not this separate person. Because I know a lot of times if you have an athletic trainer that's coming in from outside that doesn't work in the school, sometimes they get, isolated and don't feel like part of that team. So make sure you include yourself. You have to reach out. And I know, Coop, you do this too. Every single day, whether I need to or not, I walk up to the front office, I walk through there, say hi to everybody. Even if I don't need to do anything, I act like I have to come up and do something. But you just make yourself known, and once they start feeling that you're part of their team as well and you want to succeed, they'll accept you and listen and respect your opinion and decisions.
I think sorry. I
No,
think
go ahead. No, go ahead, Larry.
both Carrie and I talked about this in our own special way. Is it takes effort. I mean, you certainly have to develop those relationships, that school or family atmosphere that you want, but it takes effort. It doesn't happen on its own. There's no miraculous time where all of a sudden you're there for 2 years and you've got an atmosphere of family. You've got to work at that every single day.
Yeah, no doubt. I kind of one thing Carrie said, it resonated with me a lot because every position I've ever been in, and I'm still relatively young as an athletic trainer, but every position I've been in has been in outreach. So I'm not at the school in the mornings throughout the day or teaching or anything. So I've always felt like you said, Larry, I had to put a little bit of extra effort into trying to become a part of the school, a part of the community. And some of the best ways that I've formed bonds with coaches has been through a little bit of conflict. I mean, one of my first 2 weeks after in my first job, I guess I was still in graduate school, but in my first full-time athletic training position, I had a conflict with a coach and ended up having a very good relationship with him after, kind of yelling at me during practice about a concussion and stuff. And I walked out after practice. He was walking to his car, and I followed him out. And I was like, "Hey, coach, we're not always going to see eye to eye on things. I'd appreciate it if you wouldn't kind of yell out and stuff in front of the coaching staff and the team, just because I'm still new and trying to develop my credibility with everyone. But if you have something that you disagree with me on, I'm more than happy to talk with you about it. Just let's do that on our own time, and behind closed doors, so we can figure things out and be on the same page." And I mean, from that moment on, I think I gained a lot of his respect just because I had that respectful conversation with him. So I think that stuff's really, really important just with the effort because those things aren't comfortable to do. I mean, I've never been a huge, conflict guy. In my younger years, I tried to avoid it a lot, but sometimes the most learning and most connection can come from conflict. And the other thing I wanted to kind of point out, and I want to get you guys, insight on is, and I see this a lot on social media too. We always talk about, how long our days are and, how much we have going on, but coaches do as well. They're teaching, probably coaching, have kids at home. So they could have had a bad day with the kids. Kid could have been sick in the morning, had a bad day at school, and they come in. They're not most pleasant to be around, and they maybe kind of blow off some steam on you. But at the end of the day, they have a million things going on, just like we do. So we got to kind of keep that in mind too. I'm sure you guys have had kind of runs with that.
Yeah, and with that said, I just had a conversation with a couple of our women's basketball team is going through a lot of injuries, and they weren't very good to start with, and now they're losing some kids. But you talked about the coach being upset with you about a concussion. We also have to remember that when we tell coaches that they are losing an important part of their team, don't take it personal. It's not, and okay, when coach finds out, they might act like they're mad at you or seem upset, but you have to know they're not mad at you. They're mad at the situation, and they feel bad that you're going, have to be out as well. And so just always remember, don't take it personal. They're not, it's like Larry, you said before, it's not us that's taking a kid out, it's the injury, so don't take things too personal when coaches get upset about injuries, because they get over it, they know.
You have to find that connection too with the coaches that you're dealing with. And I think Jeremy alluded to it. He's trying to make an effort to have a game night with some of the coaches and their family. And I'm sure, Carrie, you go to all the coaches meetings, and I did as well. You have to find that connection, something you can talk about that's not athletics or not injuries or not sport related, to develop that connection, that friendly atmosphere, so that you can talk about things like you did, Todd. Kudos to you for approaching that coach, and especially being a young professional. Sometimes you try and just skirt around that. You avoid that. It's that fight or flight.
And complain about it on social media later.
Yeah. and so, I was actually very impressed that you did that, because most young people would absolutely deflect that away and avoid that at all expense. But you saw the fruits of your labor there, better relationship.
Yep. Yeah, no doubt.
I'll say coaches talk. So once you have a great interaction or build a relationship with one coach, if somebody new comes on board or they start to say something, that coach will have your back and be like, oh no, he's great. He's trying to help out our team. They'll have your back, and that the word spreads, same with parents and other, once you impress one parent, they'll start talking about how much you impress them. And then other parents may not even know you, but they know that they've heard, so.
And on the flip side of that, I don't know if you guys are aware, the Ford Motor Company did a study years ago, and that for every bad thing that happens, 8 people hear. For every good thing, 1 person hears. So when you have a negative interaction, you can best guarantee you're going to have some issues trying to put out that fire or that negativity. So, those positive interactions are very, very important.
Yeah, that's great.
Repeat those numbers for me. For every bad thing, it's 8 people, and for every good thing, it's 3?
1.
Okay. Even worse.
Yeah.
that magnifies the importance of making sure we're doing the right things and trying to, again, approaching everything we can with positivity.
Right.
Then, it's harder to do, but it'll spread. So on the kind of on the, not, I shouldn't say on the flip side, but officials are another kind of unique part of our job that we deal with, and it's a little bit more complicated just because we don't see them every day, and we maybe see them once a year. You know what I mean? Whether it's pregame medical timeout or even walking out to the field before the game, but those are people that we could potentially have conflict with as well. Obviously, the medical timeout's put in place, so we can deliberately communicate with officials. But are there other ways or better ways that because officials play a part in injuries too, whether it's, stopping a game or maybe not making a call or making a call that, either could protect or maybe in our eyes not protect the kid from injury during a game. Are there ways outside the medical timeout maybe that we could help, better communicate with officials? Or yeah, Larry.
So,
Hey.
yeah, I guess I was very blessed to live in a community where a lot of the officials I saw for multiple events. They were maybe a football official and they did volleyball too, or soccer, and they were wrestling officials. So I mean, I actually first name basis. Hey, Coop, how you doing? Hey, Joe, how are you? How the kids? But
Yeah.
I was very fortunate that way. And what I did is, whenever there was a new rule, whether it be what sport, I'd go up to him at the beginning of the year and say, "Hey, listen, can you explain to me the rationale for this rule and how you are going to enforce this rule? As an athletic trainer, I need to be aware of this. So any help you can give me would benefit you and me." And when you start doing that, it's a collaboration rather than you just deal with each other, but you're collaborating for the safety of the kids. They look at you a little bit differently too. Um, I had to miss a soccer game one time, and the next soccer game, same officials, and they, Coop, where were you? We missed you. We like having you on this. We feel comfortable having you on the sideline. We appreciate you. And I was like, oh, thanks. I appreciate you guys too. Thanks for saying something. But you've got that rapport. You've got to be a people person. It goes back to what both Carrie and I said originally. We are a people profession. You've got to be able to talk and find a way to connect with them.
It's all about building relationships. I like to think of it like this. Obviously, the pre-meeting, like you're talking about, get to know who they are and talk to them before the game starts. But how would you feel as an athletic trainer if you're over on the sidelines doing an evaluation on a kid and an official comes over and starts yelling, "What the heck are you doing? Are you blind? That's not how, you're not keeping this kid safe." Okay, realize that they're officials. We're not officials. They know what they're doing. They don't want to be yelled at and criticized about the way they're doing things any more than we want to be criticized about the way they're doing things. So kind of remember that in the back of your head, that twist it around. You wouldn't want that to happen to you. So why would you do that to them? If you don't agree with something that they're doing, it's unfortunate, but yelling at them in the middle of the game isn't going to help. But like you said, Larry, that pre-conversation, getting to know them, helps so much. It's all about relationship building.
Yeah, I always try to look at the big picture too, kind of like what we were talking about earlier. Like these officials are taking time away from their families or maybe even their jobs where they could be making more money, so they can come out and help officiate a game so the kids can do something they enjoy. And it really kind of disheartens me some of the times, the ridicule that they get. They're all going to make bad calls. We're human, but they're doing a great service for just athletics in general, so the kids can do things that they love. So I always try to keep that in the back of my head too. So switching gears a little bit, Larry, do you want to say something?
No.
Okay. So switching gears a little bit, with kind of getting more into like interprofessional with athletic trainers in general. And we can kind of open a Pandora's box with this. We kind of referred to the communication earlier, whether it's on social media, could be face to face. It's very polarized. There's one side here, there's one side there. There's not much gray area. It's either, a lot of it seems black or white. That's what people kind of think things as. So I guess, kind of open it up. I mean, we see people, complaining a lot on social media, whether it's about their job or asking a question, and then we see all kinds of different responses. A lot of them, unfortunately, being negative. How can we, as athletic trainers, on a public forum like with Twitter, Facebook, how can we maybe initiate these conversations better without whether it's tone, how can we start to initiate these things better so maybe all the responses aren't negative, because it could be maybe it's somehow the question or the post is being portrayed. How can we do a better job of initiating that stuff on public forums?
I am probably one of the most sarcastic people that you'll ever meet, but sarcasm doesn't come across in text and writing. And so I would say try to remember that when you're on social media and typing things, that not everyone interprets what you're writing as sarcasm, and it might, come across wrong. Um, a lot of new athletic trainers that are, brand new in the profession, 1 or 2 years, will go on social media and ask for advice. And I think they're truly needing advice. And so when the people come on and respond in sarcastic ways, it's not helpful. I mean, it's funny to some of us who understand sarcasm and get that, but if, you know, I just see some of the things that are so dramatic on how people, well, I would tell that guy to blah, 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 and I'd report him to blah, blah, and all. and, and I think, really, would you do that? Or, and is that good advice? How about you just go talk to the person you're having a conflict with first and let them know that, that bothered you. But so sarcasm and just how remember, if you're responding to someone on social media asking for advice, just make it real advice. They really need help if they're asking, especially if they're young.
I guess maybe my age is going to show here a little bit, but I think that I've had to step away from social media at times, and Carrie and I have talked about this because there's so much and negativity, and the questions that are asked to me are just ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a correct way and a correct question to ask for advice on a social media platform. Maybe you're having difficulty with exercises, maybe you're getting final range of motion on an athlete's injury, and you want some help or assistance. That's a great forum. You can get all kinds of ideas. But I don't think that social media is a place to complain about a coach or a parent or an administrator, or talk about somebody who stepped in front of you while you're sitting on your cookie golf cart, things like that. And I think society as a whole has lost that filter to be able to decide what is appropriate and what's inappropriate to ask for advice for. So I've had to step away, from the Facebook and the Twitter and stuff, just because of that negativity. And some of these, I think Mike and I have had some conversations about, he is an absolute advocate for our profession. I love the way he does it. Everything's positive, or the questions he asks are appropriate, what I feel are appropriate questions. He's needing advice. He's needing maybe some suggestions, and he's looking for other avenues or other ways to do it. But he's never negative. He's never sarcastic. He's never stirring up the pot and, putting lighter fluid on the fire. I mean, it's always seems to be extremely positive and thought provoking. And I think that, I don't know, I whenever I put anything on, and I put something on yesterday, I try to be positive. I had an opportunity to go speak to the senior athletic trainers at University of Pittsburgh. And I'll tell you, I came out of there recharged and energized from their enthusiasm. Well, that's positivity. I tried to share that, and that's truly how I felt. And honestly, most of us probably started our social media platforms for personal reasons, and maybe sometimes the professional kind of filtered in there. I tried to always keep my professional life professional, separate. And then if it's a social media personal account, then it's a personal issues, that's just me.
Sure. Yeah. I actually had a cool conversation with Mike at NATA. It was the first time I met him, but just like you guys were saying, I mean, he's as big of an advocate for athletic training as you can have. And we kind of going back to, and we were talking about the questions that people ask on social media, and being a young professional, I kind of share the same viewpoint as you, Larry, that, and I guess this is kind of my entrepreneurial spirit in my mind, that the forms that we have are awesome. if we want to ask questions like, how can I get more range of motion at the end of this rehab, or how can I get those last few degrees? But for like some of the simple questions, and this is more talking to young professionals, you got to try to exhaust all your options, all your other options first.
Right.
Take a little bit of initiative and put some effort into finding an answer on your own first. And if all else fails, then you come back and ask your colleagues. It's just trying to take a little bit of initiative. I think that's kind of been lost, like you said. And maybe it's looking for the easy way out, or maybe being a little bit lazy. And I'm not trying to I'm not trying to be negative at all. I just think we need to take, as younger professionals, I'm kind of just talking to those people, but take a little bit more initiative on your own first to find the answer first. And if all else fails, then come back and ask, some of the more seasoned colleagues or people that have been through that and get help from them there.
So let me jump in real quick. There's quite a few people that are checking in online. Perry, Don, Siobhan, Chris, and then Siobhan said that she's super excited that we're talking about this and just how helpful it is. And Brian Anderson, Richard Davis, Leander Walker. So Leander Walker gave a big shout out to you, Coops, and giving you like high fives and all caps and stuff like that. Jaime Lopez, Margot Long, and Clea Summerall. I'll checking in live, just joining the conversation just to hear what you guys say. And it's funny that we're talking kind of about social media while they're checking in live on Facebook. But like you just said, it can be a great area for growth. And one of my favorite things about social media is that I get to connect with people and I get to see other situation, because here I am in Texas where athletic training is pretty big. Like, it's pretty well known. It's pretty prominent. But then I hear from people in other parts of the country where they barely get any extra stipend. They have all these extra duties. They're a full-time teacher and they're only paid on a 10-month contract instead of a 12-month contract, something like that. And I'm like, oh, wow. Me wanting a third athletic trainer for our high school isn't as big a deal whenever you look at the whole situation. And, and I've had my times where I've also said dumb things, or like, oh, well, you need to do this, or you need to report that. So instead of just, hey, go talk to them. So it's one of those things that I'm still learning too. But to everybody that's checking in live, I really appreciate you joining the conversation. And again, if you're checking in live, then you know how to get it. But if you're listening to the podcast later, then you can follow sportsmedicinebroadcast.com/Facebook. And then it'll send you like a notification. So, all right, so we're going to continue on there, Todd. Or I think I kind of cut you off, Larry. Go ahead.
That's okay. I'm going to maybe speak for Carrie just a little bit here. We're I guess seasoned veterans, I guess people call it.
Noted that he introduced you as old.
Yeah, I
me as old. So
I always had colleagues from local high schools that, if there was an injury here at my school, I'd call them and, explain to them what happened, what we saw. And you develop that relationship with other athletic trainers in your area. Well, I think they are your mentors. They might be your same age. They might even be younger. They could be older, but they are your mentors, because you have conversations with them. You learn to respect them. You learn to trust them. And so those people are the ones that you should talk to. Todd, you're talking about exhausting resources. Mm-hmm. Talk to them, get a feel from them before you go out on social media. And I say I'm old school, but it's about communicating, talking to people and developing those relationships and making sure that you have someone that you can trust and you can talk to. And Carrie, I know you did that. That's just the person you are.
And I can add to that. We have in Oregon, there's about 8 of us, and we're all scattered all over Oregon, this group of 8, but we have a group text. And so that's where we vent our, oh my gosh, I had the stupidest athlete, say something dumb today, or, oh, I'm so mad at this coach. That's where we vent things that are negative and we need to vent, and somebody else, can jump in and say, oh my gosh, I've had that too. I'm sorry that happened, and that's where we tell our funny stories and use sarcasm, because we all know each other and know that we have this little venting circle within the profession and within a group of friends. again, does it need to go to, I don't even know how many thousands are on that, on the different Facebook page and followers on Twitter, but develop a tight group of friends where you can vent and be negative and sarcastic and tell funny stories. You know, save the negativity for, you know, your close friends, but not for the world to see. I guess I love the profession of athletic training so much. I don't want to put out there in the public when something bad happens, because I don't want it to affect people's view of this profession. Does that make sense? So I don't like when people talk negatively about our profession, because I love it so much and I want it to grow. And so in order to do that, it's not helping the profession to say bad things and talk negatively and talk trash about other athletic trainers because they didn't introduce themselves to you at a football game or something like that. So those things bother you, go handle it, take care of it right then, go talk to them. Yeah, it's just funny, the things, like you said, some of the things are just crazy that people are worried about.
I would, like you just said about people complain about the athletic trainer didn't come up and introduce themselves. Well, did you go to them and
Exactly. If that bothers you, go over there and say
yeah,
hi.
I mean, for crying out loud, if they're not going to make the effort, you make the effort. What's
Yeah, there's no rules. It
and
doesn't have to be the
there's no
home.
rules, and you might end up developing a friendship, a tremendous friendship, for years.
Yeah, maybe they're brand new to the profession and super shy, and all they need is someone to come over and say hi to them, and all of a sudden you're their mentor, you know, that they're happy to talk to. It's funny. It's all about communicating.
It's interesting because when I announced that I was going to retire, there's a lot of people that said they're going to miss me, seeing me on the sidelines or at wrestling events or this and that, because they always enjoyed talking, whether it be about athletic training or not. So you develop those relationships through effort, through time, and through trust.
Those are great points. And I think Carrie, I mean, you both hit on it, but when Carrie was talking about having a group text with her colleagues, I think, and I want to emphasize this just because, we're not trying to say that it's positive 100% of the time and things are always great and it's always good and we're being naive. Like things, people have bad days, bad things happen, but
Absolutely.
it's knowing how and where to voice your concerns or to vent.
Yeah.
I usually do it to my wife because she just listens and doesn't know much about the profession and just kind of listens. But you don't want to put that out there for thousands of people to see, because number one, that you look as being a complainer and people don't like being around complainers. People look at you as being negative, and unfortunately, as like Larry, you said with that stat earlier, negativity is much more easily to be passed along, and it's much more infectious, unfortunately, than positivity is. So those things start to create a really bad wheel that's hard to stop once it gets going. So we're not saying that being negative is you should never be negative, because obviously there's gonna be times for that. Just know when and know how to do it.
Mm-hmm. And
That's
you know, one of the big things about developing relationships, say something positive to somebody. All of a sudden that changes their whole, just let them know, hey, Coop, you've been a huge mentor to me, and I appreciate yesterday when you took care of my athlete at when they came to your school. Thanks for that. They said you're super cool, and I appreciate that. Now, did your day just turn around? I mean, it's all you have to, don't don't be afraid to tell people the positive impact they're having on you.
and don't keep score. You don't keep score. You know,
Yeah.
you might have 3 or 4 or 5 negative things, but it's okay. You can say something positive. Don't keep score, whether positive or negative. Just try and be positive. That's all.
Mhm.
So when we're talking about this stuff, positivity, being professional in those public forums, the thing that sometimes we may not think about is, and Larry, you referred to this, having a personal and a professional, kind of split. My all my social media is professional. I'll put some personal things in there because I think that kind of vulnerability sometimes helps create connections where people can kind of relate with you. But our athletes are on social media. Our athletes may, if they find a way to follow us on Twitter or see what we're posting about, And those things can get back to the players, to the coaches, to the parents. So, in your opinion, and this kind of goes back into everything we've been talking about, but how are we portraying ourselves to our athletes if they can kind of see what we're posting?
Well, that is a great point, and it's something I wanted to bring up before the end. There's people, unfortunately, that vent on social media. They're losing their jobs.
Mm-hmm.
There are employers that are monitoring that kind of stuff now, and if you say something, or if you're continuing to be negative or condescending, or just disrespectful to um, parents or athletes or coaches or administration, it's going to come back and bite you in the butt. And we're seeing more and more of that. So, everybody that's out there using social media has to be a little bit more mindful of that, moving forward. It's becoming a reality.
And again, I'll play devil's advocate here because somebody would say to that, well, that, those are private accounts that only people can, only athletic trainers can be on these accounts. Well, guess what? Those people aren't all your friends. There's thousands of people on there, and screenshot is a thing. And, it's just very inappropriate. And like I said, if you need to vent, and we all do, and that's not a awful thing. We all need to vent and have to say something negative once in a while. Say it to your friends, your real friends in private, and get through that. It's don't do it on a social media platform.
And what you're going to find too, and Carrie, I was fortunate enough to serve with Carrie on a committee on the NATA secondary school committee, and she was the um, board liaison, and she did an awesome job, by the way. But we talk, and we do, her and I would talk, and sometimes it would be negative, but it would be refreshing because she might have a different alternative to the situation, might be helpful. And then, the sarcasm would make you laugh, and then you realize, well, really that problem isn't quite as big as I thought it was. I mean, I was making more of it. Maybe I need to just let it go, just be like Frozen and let it go.
Uh, yeah, and kind of tying in with that as well. And again, I mean, you don't really have to. There's not really a minimum age to be on social media. So some of the kids who see stuff we're posting could be minors, and again, if this stuff gets back to their parents, and again, assuming we're in the secondary school setting, a parent sees something we post, and they're like, "Well, I don't want my kid receiving care from that guy or that lady. I'm gonna go take them to just the local hospital because I don't like how they're portraying themselves, or I don't like what their views are, so on and so forth. So I'm gonna take them somewhere else, and then we can't do our job because we're not being professional on a public forum."
Mm-hmm. Again, keep it positive about our profession.
Yep.
That's how we're going to grow.
Absolutely.
So, kind of a little confessional here. I have done that to where, like, in that secondary school Facebook group, I was like, man, I think it was a comment to somebody's post, but I was like, I don't like football. I hate football, right? So because I really didn't like football here. I didn't like, the coaches didn't like dealing with it. But then, like, later, probably, I don't know, a month later, because I'm not very sharp, right? I realize how foolish that is, because somebody can get that. And even if I don't like the coaches and the situation and the way that they run practice and the way that they do things, there's still those athletes that I'm taking care of that are going to see that I don't like football. That means I don't like them. That means I'm not going to take care of them, right? So I've made that mistake before. Whereas now, I like the coaches, the athletes, the way things have changed. But even at that, I'm going to take care of those kids. But if I put that out there on social media that I don't like football, then it changes a lot of things in the way that I can care for those athletes. And, I just speak from experience. And I learned that that's not a really good idea. I didn't get fired. I didn't get in trouble. I didn't get reprimanded. But it's something that I did and then later learned how it can negatively impact the future of how I care for people.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll just add to that, since we're doing a little confession time. Usually I'm, well, I mean, I would say most of the time, like I was talking about with you guys on Tuesday, I try to be overly positive, almost to a fault. But this is probably I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago now. when I was working at my previous school before I moved. And I enjoy working out. At a pretty hardcore gym with people yelling and screaming, so on and so forth. And I was doing a deadlift, and people are screaming the F word at me and this and that. And I posted it, not thinking anything about it. And I got in trouble from the hospital just because that does not portray professionalism. And look, again, I had no malintention when I was posting it, but it just makes you think about. And this is kind of one of the things we're going to touch on here in a second is think about what you post. And even if it's not the words you're physically typing into the post, the content that you're actually posting to could be, I guess, perceived as malicious, even though there was no malicious intent with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that Carrie and I probably have a little different take on this too, because we've been stewards of the profession. As a committee chair, I'm a District 2 secretary. I was involved in Pennsylvania on the board of directors and different committees, and Carrie's been involved at the national level for years, and in her district and in her state. So we've had to be cognizant of that for probably a much longer time than the average person. And I don't mind that. It was never a burden. It was because I understood the importance of being positive and watching the content that you put out there, and people are watching you. You're maybe under a little bit of a microscope. So, if you have aspirations to be involved in the profession and to, maybe have an office position in your district or your state or whatever, you better be aware of that, because people look that kind of stuff up.
And if you do have aspirations of that, do it. It's one of the most rewarding things I've done in my career. Absolutely, is become involved.
Absolutely.
Jeremy, you got anything to add on that?
No, nothing specific on that. I'm gonna. One of the things it just kind of comes back to. I know y'all were talking about coaches specifically in the beginning, but even yesterday, there was a situation where it could have gone one way, but it didn't. So one of the expectations is that we're setting out water for each of the teams, right? But we don't ever know when they're practicing. They don't communicate. They don't tell us their schedule. They don't tell us, oh, hey, we're not going out today. I've asked them a couple of times, say, hey, let me know when you're going out, and we can make this happen. Because I'm not going to set stuff out, and then you're not going to use it, or me have to go chase it down later, right? And so I've said, okay, well, we're going to create a solution. We're going to set up these coolers. We're going to put them right outside the door. You come get them. You bring them back. We'll refill them. We'll clean them, that kind of stuff, right? So we'll have it ready. You just have to come get it, since we don't know where and when. And then they're like, well, now we have to come get this and then go across the street and get the water bottles. I'm like, okay, all right, well, I'm going to put the water bottles on top of the cooler so that it's ready for you to come get. He's like, now I have to keep up with the bottles. And so one of the coaches came to me complaining, was like, can't we just put out it's like a water boy, like a hydration station type thing, right? And I was like, okay, because in all of my emails, I said, this is what we're trying. If this doesn't work, communicate with me and we'll create a win-win situation, something that works for both of us. And then so when he came in, he knew he could communicate and say, hey, can't we just do this instead? This was so much easier. And I said, okay, we'll fill it up. We'll set it right here. You haul it out. You bring it back. We'll fill it back up the next day, right? And instead of it creating a situation where he's complaining to the AD or to the principal, it's like, okay, we created a solution. You didn't like it. Let's find a different one. Okay, that didn't work. Let's find something else. This is what you want. We can make that work, right? It doesn't really take any more effort, but it's just about sending out that email saying, hey, I'm open to communication. We're trying this out. If it doesn't work, then let's find something that does work for both of us.
Well, Jeremy, think about how much negativity you save. If the coach goes to practice and complains about you, and you've got all of the athletes, and then the athletes go home and they're talking with their parents, and they say, oh yeah, can you believe what Jeremy did? So all of a sudden, by doing that, that was so positive, and you created an atmosphere that you're an ally instead of an enemy.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So keep moving along here. I know we're kind of skipping around, touching on some different things, but again, kind of looking at the broad picture of the communication on. I keep thinking in my head Twitter, because that's what I see most of. I don't get on the secondary school page as much as I should, so I probably start doing that. But What is some, I know a lot, some of this may seem redundant, but thinking about picking your battles, so like when you see a post you may disagree with, or something you don't like, or something that kind of seems, like a stupid question or things like that, how important is it to pick your battles? Like, how do you go about that, Carrie? I saw you nodding your head.
Um, well, and I'm not thinking when you say pick your battles, it's a different way. I'm not thinking about social media. I'm thinking about how people get so worked up about little things at work. And sometimes you read some of those things and you just want to say, oh my gosh, relax. Like Coop, you touched on it earlier. Yes, someone's always going to stand in front of you. If you wait a couple minutes, they'll move, or just stand up and, it's not that big of a deal. Don't get worked up about it. And, gosh, what are some other, it's just, yeah, pick your battles, because there's always something that's going to go wrong, but don't let that ruin your whole day. But yeah, as far as social media, yes, there's always people who think that they have to give their voice on every single post, and we know who they are. I mean, we all see, and really, yeah. Coop, what do you got for that?
But, the email that we sent, or that you sent to Jeremy, back in April, was about the top 10.
Yeah.
The first one, I think this is the one that we see most often complaints on social media, and that's about last minute changes, late night text and phone calls, and not sending athletes to you. And I think that those are situations that can be rectified and changed very, very easily, very quickly. The last minute changes, send out an email, or say, hey, here's my cell phone number. Could you text me if there's going to be any changes or last, cancellations, and let them know that, here, I am available for you. Please make the effort. And if they don't, say, hey, listen, don't forget you have my cell phone number. I'd really appreciate it if you had to take a minute and send me a text to let me know if there's a cancellation or a delay or a change, whatever it is. So it might take 2 or 3 times, but it'll change. As far as late night texts and calls, I see nothing wrong with that. I think if they're trusting you and they know that you're there for a reason, and that's to help their team and their athletes. If they're texting you late at night, you might say, hey, listen, I appreciate that, but normally I'm in bed by 10 o'clock. If it's after 10 o'clock, send me an email. I'll answer first thing in the morning, or I'll get a hold of you first thing in the morning. Don't get angry. That's a good thing if they're texting you or trying to call you or trying to get your advice. I look at those things slightly different than maybe the average person. And then the other thing is not sending athletes to you. You just have to do a better job of selling your skill set, whether it be to the parents or to the athlete or to the coach, whatever. You just got to buckle down, put your nose to the grindstone, and show your value.
I've been known to send a text, excuse me, late at night to somebody, knowing full well that they were probably asleep, and I didn't expect them to answer that at all, but I was afraid I would forget if I didn't do it right then. So sometimes that might be that maybe they're not expecting you. You don't need to answer at 10 o'clock at night. Save it for morning. Unless you feel comfortable answering it. And then the first thing that you talked about, last minute changes and things like that. One of the best things that we added to our contract a long time ago was that last minute we needed 48 hours notice. So if they add something and we already have planned, like if they add something to a Saturday, oh, we have a scrimmage this Saturday. Oh, sorry, coach, I didn't know about it. And I already have plans with my family to do this. I'm protected by my contract. Now, sometimes do I still go and cover that last minute practice? Absolutely, because I care about my job, I care about my team, and I want them to be successful. And so sometimes they need us there. So, but don't always feel that you have to drop everything because some coach added something at the last minute, and maybe that's something you can think about adding to your contract so it covers you, that way as well.
So real quick, Mike Carroll is watching live on Facebook or checked in, joined, and
Hello, Mike
that's what we
Carroll.
call the Mike Carroll rule. I think in the secondary school Facebook group, because he's the one that said, "Hey, you need to make sure this in the contract. You need to tell the coaches that if they don't communicate within, a minimum 24 hours, other than weather-related conditions, then you're kind of going to be on your own. Of course, it has to be in your contract. But then also, as you were just talking about, so if you're looking, okay, I'm on the live thing. I'm holding up my phone, right? So if I hold down the send key, then it has the option to schedule a text. So I could schedule the date and the time for a text. Cool. So I don't know what phone you use, but you can try doing that as well if you need to schedule a text for tomorrow morning so you don't forget.
Thank you, Jeremy. Good.
so that can help as well. But again, it depends on your phone. And I have a Verizon. I'm using the Message Plus app that comes with the Verizon. And so you have to kind of figure out how it works for you. But there's that option as well. So Mike, thanks for jumping in there. Joseph Hernandez also just commenting and saying thanks for everything we're sharing so far. So we're kind of continuing on working. I think we're almost towards the end of the list there. So Todd, what else you got?
The last thing, and again, just tying into everything else, is working on communication skills and how can we continue to improve and get better on how we're communicating with people. I guess kind of just starting off this last point, and I think the one word we haven't used yet, and if anybody on here follows, and if you don't follow, I'd highly recommend Gary Vaynerchuk on all social media platforms. He's awesome. Is the word is empathy. And every time I have a conversation or go into, I know I'm going into a conversation and trying to, prepare for that. The two words I always keep in my head is I want to approach this conversation with empathy and respect, because I know if I do that, regardless of what it's about or what I think the outcome is going to be, I know that I'm going to be approaching that in the correct way. And real quick, just because I have it up, because I'm pretty scatterbrained and I'm not good at things, thinking off my feet. There was an anonymous post last night on Twitter, and it said, in quotes, "It happened to me. I got attacked by one of my own. A physician attacked me on Twitter. I feel surprised, betrayed, even worse, at a loss for words. Has this happened to anyone? And if so, what do you do to pick up the pieces and keep moving forward?" And my response was, just move on. I always think that someone must be in a really bad place or have something going on for them having to attack someone on Twitter or social media. With that in mind, I feel sorry for them, for whatever they're going through or having that negative mental mindset. Try to give them a calculated response, wish them the best, and move on. So that's kind of how I approach that stuff. And again, I just want to try to give an example, maybe just to start this last point off. But I think those things can go a long way.
One of the signs of a mature relationship is the ability to disagree, but still be a friend or still be able to have a connection. Whether you have committee work or you're a colleague or whatever, there's going to be times where you disagree with their direction or their philosophy or their approach to things. That doesn't mean you hold a grudge. You gotta sometimes you just gotta move on. And I gotta be honest with you, I didn't always do that with some of my coaches. They were just they it was like fingernails on a chalkboard. They got me. They would get under my skin, and sometimes maybe for a while I would be a little bit irritated, but it didn't mean I didn't interact and work with them. You just have to learn to let that go. Life's too short.
I learned a great lesson in the boardroom. Good boardroom story. When Jim Thornton was president, we in the boardroom had a very heated discussion, all of us, and opinions were all over the board. And I was upset. My opinion wasn't the most popular opinion, and so we finally had this long discussion that was heated. And then, Jim said, okay, let's take a bathroom break. And of course I stormed out because I just needed a breather and to get out of that room for a minute, and went straight to the bathroom. And when I came out of the bathroom, President Thornton was literally standing there waiting for me. And he, said, "Are we still friends?" And, and that's all I needed. We both smiled and laughed and hugged and said, absolutely, I'm passionate about this, you're passionate about that. And it's okay that we have different opinions, and we got to hear all of our opinions. And of course we're still friends, and so we hugged, and that was it, never spoke of it again. It's just, but that's a great, for him to see that I was upset, and to come up and just give me a hug. That, great example of great communication and relationship building from President Thorne.
And also a great example of empathy.
Yes, yeah. I understand that you are passionate about that, and it's hurting you. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I would say
we haven't talked about parents yet. Parents is a big one.
Yeah. Yes.
There's a lot of parent questions on social media if we want to talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, you can take the reins on that one, Carrie.
Well, I guess we see a lot of just social media posts about, and I think Larry, you and I talked about one of them, but about, oh, I can't believe this parent took their kid to the ER after I told them what the injury already was, and they went and saw their doctor, and the doctor told them the exact same thing, and that, athletic trainers are upset about that. Well, hey, guess what? That just gave you credibility. And now the next time the parent, has an injury, or their friend's kid has an injury, and they say, well, we're going to take him to the doctor, they might say, hey, we did that, and Coop was right about the injury, and I wasted some money. So, think about seeing him first. And we talked about the one, if a parent wants to do it, it's their kid. They can do whatever they want with their kid. You have to remember that. Just because you're treating their athlete, and we talk about them as our athletes and our patients, they're still at the secondary school level. It's their kid. They can do anything they want with their kid. That's recognize that as well, and don't take it personal.
And you might not agree with what they're doing, but again, it goes back to what Carrie said. It's their kid. It's they're the one responsible for them. They have to feel comfortable with how they're treating their own son or daughter. So, step back and I mean, and not that Jeremy, I know you have young kids, Todd, I don't know about you, but and Carrie, I think that kids, when you have your own kids, it changes your perspective on things too, because now you have a different angle that you're looking at, different approach. So just, kind of keep that kind of stuff in mind.
And again, pick your battles. Comes up again, pick your battles. Don't try to fight with the parent on how you're going to treat their kid if they want to do it differently. That's their choice.
And there, that might be an opportunity for you to, again, sell your skill set. Maybe taking a little extra time next time they come in with their son or daughter, and explain what the plan of care is, and explain what you're going to do in your athletic training facility to help them. And just, you might have to take a little extra time with those difficult parents, but it's all part of the process. If you truly love the profession and you want to develop it and grow it the way it should be.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to...
Oops, sorry, Jeremy.
I think I'm gonna kind of close this out with this. So recently on Instagram, I shared a story. I called a kid's grandparent, because that's who that kid lives with, and we were discussing the concussion care. The kid got injured at home. Our district policy is if it's an injury at home, they have to see their doctor and be treated. And obviously school insurance can't cover injury that occurs at home. So the grandmother was very upset. Why does she have to go back to the doctor? Why does this have to happen? And we already took the athlete to the doctor and all these kind of things. Well, the issue wasn't that she didn't want to take her child to the doctor. Her issue was the money, right? It was there, several people living in that house. They're already stretched really thin, and they couldn't afford going to another doctor. So instead of me saying, well, you have to take your athlete to the doctor or else, it's like, I understand the situation. I'm sorry this happened. Here's some options and that kind of thing. And so again, it's communicating and building those relationships and understanding, like you just said, Todd, the empathy, understanding the situation, what is really going on behind and just giving that person an opportunity to talk. And as recently we talked about with Charlotte Koenig about setting those boundaries, maybe, okay, we got 5 minutes, share what is going on with me, restate what you feel like is the main issue, and then go from there. But I think over and over again, we said, if you communicate, if you slow down, if you listen, if you're empathetic, then you'll do a lot better, right? And unfortunately, I am very slow to learn this, right? And so even with my kids, probably yesterday or the day before, it's like, no, go do this. But Dad, can I? No. But Dad, can I? No. But Dad, all I want to do is say, can I help you? Oh, okay, well, sure. Well, if I would have freaking listened, then it wouldn't have caused all that problem and all that drama, right? And so, I'm definitely still greatly in the learning process at the age of almost 39. So, kind of a closing out, Todd, Larry, and Carrie, why don't you give everybody a way to get a hold of you and your final thought about how we can communicate and grow? Let's start with Todd. How did they get a hold of you? And you're kind of wrapping up of the episode.
So the easiest way to get a hold of me, like I said last time, is on social media at Todd Sports Med across all platforms. And my closing thing is real simple, is, and we didn't cover this, is just learn, and it's hard, but learn how to not take everything personally. You'll save yourself a lot of heartache. Just realize people aren't coming at you with sinister intentions. They're not trying to get back at you or get revenge. And if you kind of keep that in mind and learn how to not take things personally, you'll save yourself a lot of heartache and a lot of sadness.
Larry?
You can get a hold of me. Best way is by email, which I'm sure Jeremy will post on the show notes or wherever you post it. And my final thoughts are, remember the phrase from, if you're a New Amsterdam TV show fan, how can I help? Remember, we're in a service profession. We're out there to help people and help people succeed. And so a good line you can always just start with is, what can I do to help you?
The best way to get a hold of me is via email as well. And I'm sure Jeremy will post that. And if I'm going to do a close by just a little bit different. I'm not a huge fan of texting because you're not able to understand what the person's emphasizing, or the tone or their feelings associated with that. So if you're upset, you're angry, you're disappointed, whatever you want to say, probably a text is not the way to get back to that person. Maybe a phone call, maybe a face-to-face meeting, and that way you can understand that person way better. And that's just me. I'm not a big fan of texting in those situations.
Well, that shows your generation. We didn't really talk about generational differences, but our generation is spending lots of time trying to figure out how to communicate best with the younger generation and what they like to, and how we help them be successful. Maybe they can also learn how to communicate how we like to communicate. Maybe you have an older coach on staff and they want you to come talk to them or give them a phone call, so it works both ways.
Good point, Carrie.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And one of the things since we're communicating, I want to make sure Mike said, hey, thanks for the shout out, but that Mike Carroll rule is actually, if you don't think it's important enough to tell me about it, then I don't think it's important enough to be there. So I don't want to misquote Mike Carroll, and then, he's also been the one that regularly comments and says, you need to work it in your contract, make sure it's, the 24-hour rule kind of thing. But yeah, I don't think there's anything that we've said here that I would need to kind of restate or reiterate, because I think everything we've said just fits right in line, and it also fits different situations. So there's tons more we could continue to talk about. The partner for today's show is Myotech, right? So if you go to sportsmedicinebroadcast.com/Myotech, you can use the code DSMB and save. Again, they're a company that is communicates like face-to-face, small business type communication, right? Really good at communicating, but they take care of you like a big company could with prices and delivery follow through. So again, sportsmedicinebroadcast.com/Myotech, using the code TheSMB if you want to check that out. this episode is sportsmedicinebroadcast.com/communicate, where I'll have the links and the comments and the thoughts and things like that, ways to get a hold of everybody. So for Jeremy, Carrie Wood, Larry Cooper, Todd Sable, and the Sports Medicine Broadcast, that is a wrap. Thanks.
Thank you.